Dr. Shaun Holt holds multiple degrees in pharmacy and medicine and has started his own natural therapeutics firm, HoneyLab, looking at natural but scientifically proven treatments for a range of conditions, including rosacea, cold sores, and eczema. He spoke to NBR's Dita Deboni about a new book he's written called Medicinal Cannabis, a brief guide for New Zealanders.
Shaun, thanks very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
I understand you've just got off a cruise.
I have, and I was sort of working as well. One hobby I have is lecturing on cruise ships. They have lecturers as part of the enrichment programme, and I talk about medical things and the science around natural products, and it's a great way to spend your holidays.
And what are people mainly interested in on those kind of cruise ships?
I talk about honey, and I talk about the good side of natural products. I talk about the dangerous side, and I have Q&A sessions where people can ask about anything. But, more and more people want natural products and they want good information. So the lectures are usually very well attended.
I bet they are. Now, I've got your book here. Can you tell us why you wrote this book?
I wanted to upskill myself primarily. I've had a big interest in medical cannabis for around 10 years now, mainly from talking to a lot of cancer patients. So my expertise, if you like, in medicine is the science around natural products. And I've done a lot of talks and workshops, dozens actually, with cancer patients, breast cancer and cancer patients. And this is the topic that comes up all the time. And so I was upskilling myself and also a little bit frustrated at some of the stories I was reading in the media. No offence, but sometimes journalists were not getting it quite right. And also I thought, well, I may as well put it together for a book for patients and also for the medical community as well, who aren't trained in this on the whole. So it's actually a book. It's a science book, but it's for everyone, health professionals and the public.
So part of the reason that people do have the wrong information and everyone has a different kind of view on it is because of the way that the product has developed. It's used widely in New Zealand but illegally, and now the government's given a green light to medicinal cannabis. What do you think it will take for everyone to sort of be on board, first of all, with medicinal cannabis and then presumably at some point recreational cannabis?
Well, they're two very different issues, and you'll never get everyone on board, that's for sure. But the vast majority of people, 94, 95, 96%, agree that medical cannabis has a role, and I certainly do. And the issue, though, is how do you achieve that? And we've seen in countries like the UK, for example, where it is legal and has been for around a year, only the last I heard, 22 people had a prescription for it, and it was hideously expensive and it took months. Whereas data from just last week shows that 1 million people are using it illegally. Now, that really bothers me because they're taking a risk. They're playing Russian roulette with their health. Who knows what they're getting? And it's going to be different products. Some could be dangerous. They're not getting the optimal treatment. So I think we're going to have the same thing here. The rules have come out and they're fine rules, but I think there's a fundamental flaw in the whole thing, and they're trying to treat it like a standard medicine. And there's just so many reasons why that's not going to work.
So what do doctors need to be able to prescribe it to just anyone who comes in with pain?
Sure. So I had many discussions with my GP colleagues, and I feel sorry for them because they've been thrown into the middle of all this with no training and not so much guidance. Now, there's a range with doctors. There's some of the more gung-ho ones, maybe working more with palliative care and cancer patients who are more prepared to try things like cannabis without all the data being there. But for the majority of GPs, they need to practice evidence-based medicine. And that means having clinical trials done like you would for any pharmaceutical product. And for cannabis, in my view, we're decades away from having that level of evidence for a range of conditions.
But why should doctors require so much evidence, given there's so much anecdotal evidence that people find it to be a relief, but also that it's hard to cause too much harm to people who take it in a therapeutic way?
So anecdotal evidence is not strong scientific data, and I agree with you. If you have millions of case reports of anything in the natural world, if people are doing things, if people are stinging themselves with bees, it probably works, else they wouldn't do it. That's true. But that's not going to give you a doctor a medico-legal reason to prescribe something. So in terms of formal, well-conducted, FDA standard clinical trials, there's very, very few at all. And so I agree with you on the downside, but also doctors would say, hey, we don't know what the downsides are. The downsides are anecdotal as well. And unless you do studies, you don't really know what the downsides are as well. So if your average GP practicing evidence-based medicine, there's no way they can prescribe this at the moment.
Right. So in a couple of months' time, if I have terrible pain, from maybe something serious and I go to the doctor and I say, I would like to access these products, they won't be able to prescribe them?
No. You may find a GP who's got an interest in this and may be able to source you some Sativex. But it might take a while. They've got to go through all sorts of hoops and approvals. Right. I think it's going to be very, very hard. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to be probably expensive as well. Down the line, hopefully we've got some nice companies coming along, and we should have some good local products, maybe some research, but that's going to take a long, long time. What bothers me is people now are in pain. If you speak to cancer doctors, they'll say around half the patients are using cannabis. And currently there's some sort of defence from prosecution, but they should be able to, in my view, go into a shop like in California and buy a product, they know what's in there, and treat themselves.
And that's why you are in favour of recreational use of cannabis or availability of cannabis, because it helps medicinal cannabis become more widespread.
Yeah. I haven't heard anyone saying this, so don't get me wrong. I think high and heavy usage of cannabis by young people in particular, and young actually is up to the age of about 30, and that was one of the learnings from the book. It's not up to the age of 15, 16, up to 30 our brains are still developing. High use of cannabis in that age group is potentially really, really bad in terms of causing serious permanent mental health damage. That aside, for people with serious medical problems, there's very, very little downside. And so if we have a positive referendum this year and cannabis shops are available and people are able to go and access high quality products and they know what's in there, that's one of the big issues at the moment. You get a product from an illegal dealer, who knows what's in? It could be correct, it could be incorrect, it could even be fatal if it's synthetic cannabis. So I just care about medical patients can go and buy something without fear of prosecution and knowing exactly what they're taking.
So HoneyLab is looking at medicinal cannabis opportunities. You'll be familiar with the market. Do you think there's a bubble emerging, and how do you avoid becoming a victim of the bubble?
Yeah, it's not a high priority, don't get me wrong. Our next stage of research is going to be Carnuka oil, for example. We've got an active program now, but certainly we're looking at cannabis. I do see opportunities. You're absolutely right. I think everyone in the business community can see this plethora of cannabis companies emerging. It seems to be almost one a week at the moment. I've got no doubt they won't survive, a bit like the early days, not all survive, a bit like the early days of the internet. Not all those companies are around it now. But I think there will be some good companies, some will fail. I can see why people are getting into this. It's going to be huge. It's arguably the biggest topic in business at the moment, and arguably the biggest topic in medicine as well. So some companies will thrive and some won't. My personal angle with natural health is to do research. That's my answer to everything. Research, research, research. Protect your IP, have a quality product, and I think that's certainly how HoneyLab will be competing if we enter this space.
And that kind of focus that you have has paid off in the last year with your HoneyVo product, and that's become a real game changer. Can you explain why?
Absolutely. So we've proven that our topical honey preparation, HoneyVo, which is patented, is effective for 2 medical conditions. That's rosacea and cold sores. Cold sores, for example, 1 in 3 people on the planet get cold sores. We went head-to-head with the current standard pharmaceutical treatment, and we matched it in terms of efficacy, but we had multiple advantages. Arguably the best product there is, but it's a natural product. That's the real game changer. If you talk to just about any consumer, they would take natural over synthetic any day if it works. So we're in the advanced stages of licensing discussions. We want to take this global by partnering with overseas pharmaceutical companies.
So that seems like a very almost rock solid business model that you've got going, and you've got the science, you've got the backing and everything else, yet you've had trouble raising capital.
We have. It's been terrible, to be honest. I won't lie. So much of my resource and time has been in raising capital, and we've really struggled here in New Zealand. We have one institutional investor, which is Quayside Holdings, and they've been a fantastic investor, but we've spoken to literally dozens, probably just about everyone, and no one else has invested. You say rock solid, and to give them credit, that you say rock solid, we haven't done it yet. So I think once we get a major licensing deal signed and announced, and investors have said this, then we'll believe your model. But at this stage, they find it very hard to compute that we can take a honey from New Zealand, which you can buy for $10 a kilo, and license that in a 10 or even $100 million licensing deal. They're struggling to understand that.
I thought the whole point of venture capital was to be in before these things hit the big time.
Absolutely right, and we're laughing, but we face this all that it's chicken and egg. So I think when a lot of the investors actually believe in us, it'll be too late, and we won't want your money. Thank you very much indeed. We needed it before.
Yeah.
Although we will actually need some money for a while, because I've got at least 7 or 8 different products I want to develop, and that will, obviously takes cash to do clinical trials. They're not cheap, and that's why a lot of people don't do them. Okay,
and finally, whatever you can tell me of what exciting things are going to be happening this year for HoneyLab.
Yeah, so we're in advanced discussions with licensing deals, and we're hoping we can announce some things there. Then there's the regulatory side, which is really important. So you can sell your products as a natural product anywhere in the world, really, but you can't really make strong claims. And without strong claims saying what it does and how good it is, you can't really sell a lot. So, for example, until recently, our rosacea and cold sore products, which we only sell in pharmacies in New Zealand, we're not allowed to put the words cold sore or rosacea on them, because then you're breaking the law because you're making a medical claim. But once you get approval by regulatory authorities, you can do that. And what's great is we've recently been approved for Honevo for rosacea and cold sores as a medical device in New Zealand with MedSafe. So that means we're currently rebranding, so we'll be the only natural product, I think, perhaps globally, that you can buy over the counter without a prescription that says rosacea and works for cold sores as well.
And most crucially, doctors can also point you in that direction,
Absolutely.
safe in the knowledge that it is tested.
Absolutely. So we've got that in New Zealand, which is great, because all these authorities work in a similar way. We're advanced with the FDA, and we're also progressing the European side. So we've got licensing deals, regulatory, and also more research ongoing. So the early results from our Carnuka oil studies will read out later this year.
Dr. Shaun Holt, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.